Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. I am Sean.
I am John.
I'm Missy.
And I'm Ray.
And joining us again tonight to talk about the movie that we're going to talk about, author extraordinaire Ivy Tholen. Ivy, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I was very pleased when Missy told me that you wanted to jump on this. And so before we get into the movie, so you've got the Taste Like Candy series is really hot right now. Taste Like Candy 2 came out 2 months ago, roughly. We had you on to talk about it. It's fucking awesome. If people out there have still not read Taste Like Candy and Taste Like Candy 2, you'll probably read both books in literally like 2 days, 3 days, because they just
like a weekend.
they just pull you right through, and that's what I love about them.
Thank you so much.
Super fun, super easy to read, super digestible, but not like stupid or anything like that. Because sometimes like easy to read is not.
Yeah,
is not
no, that's
compliment.
100% true.
It is. I laugh because I immediately thought of Dan Brown. I immediately thought of Dan Brown.
Very fair. Yes, that's a very excellent point. And I hate the way he writes. Because, oh man, I read one of his books, and every time a chapter ended, it was like, dun dun dun. And I was like, come on. Just because someone exited the bathroom, you put it in a dun dun dun? Come on, man. Stop it.
I was literally just going to say the same thing as an example, and the bathroom was locked. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Yeah, I think that's literally in one of his books. But no, the kills are fantastic. And you can really tell that you love horror, and
fuck yeah,
it's so. I think I actually said this to you in a DM. It is you, as an author, feel very similar to cinematically Joe Begos, because you watch Begos and you can see the people he loves, the films he loves. He puts it right there on the screen, and it's an homage, and it's just done so well and so entertaining that you're like, yeah, I get it. And you can see the Slumber Party Massacre movies. You can see the Sleepaway Camp references. You're like, I got it. You dig the shit I dig. So again, if you like those kind of movies and you just horror,
thank you.
Pick it up.
I do. Slashers are a silly thing, but I take them very, very seriously, even if I see them as silly. So it's kind of like I like to joke that I write slashers in a glitter gel pen, in a hot pink gel pen.
Oh my god, glitter gel pens! Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah. So
we love slashers here too, and
they're my favorite thing ever.
Right. And you write fun, gory books. So if you're listening to us and you haven't read these books, you should check them out.
Slasher in a carnival, slasher in a mall, slasher in a carnival. That's all you have to know.
And I'll say, so far, my two favorite books reading this summer, Tastes Like Candy 2. Well, Tastes Like Candy. I reread Tastes Like Candy, but we'll just say the Tastes Like Candy series. And John, I'm just trucking through Movie Made Los Angeles, and once I get readjusted to reading something that is very academic, it is just absolutely fucking fascinating. And I would implore anybody who loves movies or Los Angeles or Southern California or painting or art in general, I think historically some of the stuff that you've kind of lined up to kind of give this backstory to something that everybody takes for granted, Southern California, and the way that the mental cameos that we have of it when you just say LA, right? Or you say Hollywood, or you say Southern California, you get these images, everyone does, and you explain why. And I think it's fabulous.
Oh, this is where it's all from. And just wait till you get to the chapter on tourist attractions. That will recast your notion of Disneyland and Universal Studios in a very, very interesting way. So I haven't really talked about this on any other podcasts, so or really anywhere for that matter. So I think this is just might as well as a good place to drop in here now. I've been contracted by Bloomsbury Press to write a sequel to Movie Made Los Angeles. I'm halfway through it, and it
Nice.
That's
go
awesome.
and
That's
it's
awesome.
thank you. And yeah, at the moment, yeah, I'm up into the 1960s right now, and Dorothy Arzner, the Hollywood's first openly queer female filmmaker, is a UCLA professor mentoring Francis Ford Coppola and Jim Morrison in the same class. That's where I am currently at right now.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. That's awesome.
True
Wow.
story.
Wow. So I feel like both of these books that we're talking about here, both Movie Made Los Angeles and Tastes Like Candy, are a good segue into the movie we're going to talk about, and that is
agree.
Ty West's MaXXXine.
Nice
Mhm.
point.
Because MaXXXine has slasher in its DNA, although it's not a slasher movie. And some people are going to walk out of the theater, I guess, pissed off. But it definitely has a very, like, he's got blinders on in a good way for 1985 Hollywood. And I feel like the same way that, like, Martin Scorsese in After Hours, King of Comedy, and I feel like I'm missing one other one. You know, there's like an older guy I used to work with that I'm friends with, and he was from New York, and we were talking about the Stones or something in the 70s in New York, and just talking about New York, and he's like, "Man, I feel like for somebody that didn't grow up there, like you get it." I'm like, "Yeah," because I feel like certain artists telegraph like certain key elements, like this visceral feeling for that time and place. And I'll be goddamn if that's not what Ty West did with this movie. So, I'm going to start with our guest. So, Ivy, first of all, for the listener, we're going to do no spoilers until we say spoilers.
Okay.
So, for right now, without going into any spoiler territory, Ivy, how did you feel about MaXXXine?
I was very, very careful about avoiding anything about this movie because I didn't want to have any kind of preconceived notions about it. I didn't want to know anything. I wanted to walk in blind. And I think that was a very good decision because if I had expected a slasher, I might have been let down. I think I told Ray that I was hoping for something that kind of like Angel.
You got it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I was very excited when I watched it, and I could tell that was definitely one of the big influences of the film was Angel. So I loved it. It wasn't. Whenever we talk spoilers, there's definitely some things that I would have liked to have seen a little bit different, but overall, I thought it was a great, and I think it's probably my favorite of the trilogy.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
Ooh.
Missy, what did you think?
I saw it on Sunday, and it took me about 3 days to figure out how I felt about it. I recommend people see it. I didn't feel like I wasted my time. I absolutely love the way it's filmed. It's filmed old school. Ty West wanted to, like, as far as I remember reading something when he was making it, that he was only using equipment and techniques that were available in the 80s so that it would be authentic, and it feels authentic. It captures the ambience, and it puts you in that time. It's beautifully shot, and the gore effects are practical and look great. I love all that stuff, and that makes it worth watching. But I was kind of let down by it in certain ways.
Okay.
It's not a bad movie by any means, and I absolutely feel people should watch it and form their own conclusions. And I can go into it more once we get to spoiler territory.
Okay.
Because there is one thing that really tipped me to kind of like, nah, I think it's okay, and there are things about it I love, but I have some issues with it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I absolutely do not feel like it's a time waster at all. So, I mean, if somebody is interested in it, I recommend checking it out for yourself.
Fair. John.
I think the alternative title of this film is The Revenge of Elizabeth Short. I think Ty West wants to cinematically avenge the Black Dahlia. Watching this film, I was like, I didn't think it was as good as Pearl or X. I think Pearl is the best of the trilogy. But I loved it as a single film on its own merits, regardless, for several reasons. But I guess just to kind of touch on what Missy was saying about, just sort of how it felt. Just for full disclosure, I saw this at the Vista Theater in 35 millimeter in Los Feliz, and it's very much one of those like sort of old timey theaters that really puts you back in that headspace. And it's run by Quentin Tarantino, and it's a theater that obviously Tarantino like has some kind of relationship, like friendship with Ty West, and so does the theater, because they showed trailers before the film, like vintage trailers that were handpicked by Ty West. And
oh, that's cool.
And they included the original James Cameron's The Terminator, Paul Schrader's Hardcore, and Vice Squad. And all three films, it's like I saw their fingerprints all over this films in varying ways. But once we get into spoiler territory, I'll get into that.
I really liked it. I thought it was a good time. It is probably the most accessible of the three movies in the trilogy. Like, I talked to somebody who was like, I didn't like it. It was too art housey for me. And I was like, oh, really? And then I thought about it, and I go, I guess that's true. Because
Not
yeah.
really? X?
Yeah,
I
they felt it
can't
was
see
too.
X's. I think whoever said that saw the A24 logo and made their decision right then and there.
Right. Because X doesn't feel that way.
I feel like part of it is the pacing on X, because I feel like X does. I don't know. There's something about the pacing on X that doesn't it doesn't go quickly for me. And I think, that same person really liked Pearl, and I was like, oh, okay. And they said, yeah, I just felt like a lot more fun, and it kind of moved more organically for me. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I really liked this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. I loved the way that he kept referencing like the real Night Stalker, and like what was and that like going back and forth, because he also does like the little news clips and things like that, and I think it's a smart way of trying to remind people like what the 80s necessarily were really like. Because sometimes I feel like when people put things in that territory or put something in the past, they don't necessarily remind you like, here, this is what the time period was like and what people were actually dealing with. So I think it enhances the viewing experience. And when like, if you're someone who doesn't have any reference point for the 80s, or you grew up, you were born after the 80s, you go see the movie and you're like, why is there tension? Why is that happening? Like, why is that a big deal? And like, it's very similar to like, if you ever saw Summer of Sam, at that film, where like, and like there's the things that are happening with the main characters, and then there's like the Son of Sam killings that are happening in the background of the story, and it enhances kind of the mania and the like tension that all the characters are experiencing in the film. And like in this film, it helps that it like and he smartly like references things like Reagan and what was going on, and like the religion, and especially, no spoiler yet, but the religious fervor and the like satanic panic of the 80s. And like, man, I thought it was entertaining as hell. So yeah, great movie. I'd say definitely go see it.
It was, and I'll just say for my bit here. So, we have X, which is like, I'll go with like a art house slasher. It is definitely like modeled on a 70s slasher. And when Pearl, came out, he said it was going to be a different kind of movie, and it was. It's modeled on these like 1940s, 1950s kind of, I don't really know what you'd call that kind of movie, but and so that was like a change of flavor, right? It still has elements of the slasher and what we saw, but it's just dressed in completely different clothing. And then he said the next movie will be again a completely different kind of thing. And I was thinking for some reason, I'm like, oh man, I'm getting like, I'm wondering if it's gonna be like Flashdance or something because of her ambition and this and that. And it's so much so that after I saw Pearl the last, I had never seen Flashdance. I like went home and rented Flashdance, and it was like just to
I'm sorry.
And plus I was like, I'd never seen Flashdance. Kirsten's like, you've never seen Flashdance, so but this is I would submit that this is an ode to the bastard sons of Brian De Palma. And what I mean by that is,
Yes.
Among other things.
I like that.
whenever you have somebody like John Carpenter or Brian De Palma or whoever that really is a high watermark, right? You get studios and filmmakers that are trying to do similar things. And there's studios that, especially back then when there were more studios and you could have an independent studio like Canon or, whatever.
Parlaco.
Yeah. And you had more voices and they would be like, well, we only have this much money, so we like this script and think we can kind of approximate a De Palma movie, but not really, but kind of, right? And, you've got your like Robert Vincent O'Neill, Angel. You've got your like J. Lee Thompson who did 10 to Midnight with Bronson and like a bunch of other Bronson movies. But those like De Palma does the psychosexual thriller. I don't know that I think that these other, I mean, I guess they are. I guess 10 to Midnight definitely, because the fucking guy's naked every time. Like every time you turn around, you're like, really? You're naked killing people again? What the fuck, man? But sleazy. And the thing with MaXXXine is, I think he was like, I'm going to make a fucking sleazy movie, but it's really her story, right? So she's on the throne and he really just bolsters that character. And then it reminded me of Malignant, where Malignant, I didn't get it at first. And I was like, oh, of course it's fucking bonkers, because Juan was like, no, I can't make it make sense because I'm trying to emulate these movies that are fucking batshit crazy and often don't make sense and often contradict themselves and trip themselves up, but still manage to get to the finish line, even with mixed results. Similar thing. Like there's stuff about this movie I didn't love, especially in the third act. But I think he was aware of like, yeah, not everyone's going to get what I'm doing, but I'm doing this and I'm committing to it. And I really appreciated it. The first viewing Saturday, I left. I was like, I really liked it, but I have some issues. I just saw it, it just ended not 2 hours ago, and it was a better viewing. I was like, man, still have some issues, but I left them at the door. I knew what they were going to be, and I left them at the door, and I took it for its own sake. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll go see it a third time.
Okay. I think I might warm up to it more on a second viewing now that I realize what I got stuck on. But I mean, of the three of them, I love X. I thought X was great. That's my favorite in the trilogy. I have tried Pearl twice and I fell asleep both times. It doesn't work for me. And this, I'm somewhere in the middle on this, but maybe I'll warm up to it later.
I think to speak to both what Sean and Missy are saying, my favorite moments from this film were the scenes that were shot on Hollywood Boulevard. Just really, and it really reminded me of and Sean, Missy, and Ray, we've talked about this. I forget on which episode it was, but I know we've talked about this before, where why there are so few horror films in which LA is explicitly identified as a setting. And I've always argued it's because film noir is like the ultimate metaphor for LA, and film noir is such a close cousin to horror that it's able to do the heavy lifting. I thought, okay, well, what takes it a step further? Well, giallo. And we get that, of course, with Brian De Palma giallo, and you know, we get that sort of like all over with a lot of the scenes in Hollywood Boulevard, all the scenes like in the video shop that Maxine lives above. You know, those were like ultimately some of my favorite scenes in the film. And I think the main issue that I had, I think one of the criticisms I think many people had about the film is that it's bereft of ideas. Like it's a lot of flash and like really bereft of ideas. And I think I don't think that's true at all. I think my issue with the film is that it had almost too many ideas. And I think people sort of use the term hollow to describe it, whereas I think it's too crowded. And which sometimes registers as some people as being hollow or boring. And it's almost as if the brain doesn't really know how to process the overload, just pivots towards oh, it's boring stance. But I do agree that ultimately it was uneven, especially during the third act. The reveal towards the end, you know, I was okay with, but would have preferred something a little different. But ultimately, with everything else, it's like I felt like, you know, it's uneven. It feels uneven because some ideas stuck to landing more than others, especially with the character of Elizabeth Bender, which I guess we'll get into in a moment because I think we definitely need to discuss that character more than anything else.
I do know this is interesting because somebody mentioned the Terminator trailer. He sat down and spoke with the cinematographer of Terminator specifically to discuss camera settings and all that kind of thing so that he could
Ooh.
match those
Oh,
for this.
wow.
Yes.
Ooh, that's cool.
Or he
That's
could
very cool.
use that as inspiration. So he intentionally like there's a reason he picked the Terminator trailer alongside this movie. I'm sure there's reasons he picked all the trailers, but that in
Yeah.
particular makes me think he was picking trailers so you could see what you're in for.
Yeah, and I would say Terminator is a very fucking sleazy movie. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
it
is
is.
for like a that you know I didn't know this as a kid, but it made me feel a little weird when I saw it as a kid. And when I saw it later, I was like, oh, this is literally Cameron doing a sleazy fucking exploitation movie on a like a studio budget with a fucking star. Like holy shit! Like it totally changed my opinion of that movie. You know, and because then the sequel, right? Really, Terminator is large. To me, the original Terminator, I can't separate it. Well, I can, but it's like that mental cameo thing about LA that John talks about in his book, where it's like when you say Terminator, the big budget flash and pizzazz of the sequel, which I haven't seen since it was in the theater, and I don't care if I ever see it again. I mean, my girlfriend's like, we have to watch it. It's great. I was like, I'll watch it with you. I don't expect to really like it, but the first one is, I mean, it's sleaze.
Sean, that's the thing though, is because it's like, I mean, although Terminator 2 is the better of the two, the the first one, because Cameron, he came from that Roger Corman school.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I forgot about
And,
that.
and essentially he's making a Roger Corman film
Yeah.
just with maybe a slightly, but it's still an independent film. That's the thing that I love about the first Terminator. Even though I liked the second one better, I still love the grittiness of the first one and the fact that it is an independent film, like by any, you know,
I
by all
didn't realize
definition,
that it was an independent film.
it is by all definition, it is an independent film, you know, really cut from the same cloth as like, you know, all the Roger Corman stuff, which, you know, it
I think it was
gets,
originally Corelco, wasn't it? Or the production
yeah,
company?
Carlocco did Terminator 2. I forget who did I think it was Live Entertainment did the first one, which is kind of similar to like maybe almost a step up from Corman's New World Productions at the time. And I mean at the time Schwarzenegger had only really made a name for himself as you know, through Conan the Barbarian.
Conan.
Yeah, at the time. And um so yeah, it kind of has that. And again, I'm just going to hint at before we get into spoiler territory. Elizabeth, Bender, the character, might have been a reference to a certain, gender swap,
Oh,
Oh shit! I just got what you're getting at.
yeah, might miss with a gender swap someone with Puritan 2 instead of Piranha 2. That's all I'm going to say.
shit.
And everything
Uh,
that she says afterward hints at what she's going to do. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
knew she was based on a male director. I knew she was based on a real life male director. I just knew it.
No, I can't, Ivy, I can't guarantee that.
No, you're
obviously,
probably right. I do know that her look, I read about this because I wanted to know what that wardrobe was, because it's very out of place sometimes. And she's based on Penelope Spheris, the way she used to dress.
yeah, totally. Oh, totally. Also from the Roger Corman school. So,
holy shit.
yeah.
Oh, what I was gonna ask is, I mean, why do you think Terminator feels sleazy? I never got that from it.
Oh,
Is
dude,
it because
here's
of the
the best.
grip?
It's the grip, but also here's the best example. When he shoots the fucking roommate like 47 times in her robe and panties, I feel like the camera
Okay.
is fucking her. Like it's such a gross, weird, like it's just weird. I don't know.
Okay.
It's a sleazy fucking movie. And then just
See, it never hit me that way. I mean, I like the
it's
first one the best
I
because
do
it
too.
feels like a horror movie. The
I
other
never
one's
saw anything past
and
two.
a big action movie, but
Go back and watch. Go back and watch that first one, Missy. I think it's the first 5 minutes. Arnold shows up. Bill
Naked.
Pullman's character.
right, I know.
The punkers go up to him. He fucking rips his heart out of his chest.
Yeah.
I know, it's awesome.
It is a sleazy movie moment.
I mean,
if ever
I don't know,
was one.
I know that movie by heart. Like I probably watched it 100 zillion times when I was a kid.
That's a
It's
lot.
a
for
movie
an
I
action
grew up
movie.
with.
The sleaziness comes in within the first 2 minutes when it just
Okay.
when it situates you in the utter seriousness of everything, when it just says the fate of the world will not be decided in the future, but it will be decided tonight. It just underlines tonight.
Yeah.
No, it's
I
it's a
just never thought of
sleazy.
it that way.
I mean, it's not sleazy like Angel is sleazy, but also so now Ivy and John have both mentioned this as far as these movies, and in the new issue of Fangoria, they talked to him and he mentioned specifically Vice Squad, which I've never seen, but I know what it is, and Angel. He mentions those two movies very specifically, and obviously Terminator is another one.
Who is anyone here seen Hardcore by Paul Schrader? No one?
I don't think so.
Don't think so.
Oh wow, this is the exact same plot. This is the exact same plot as MaXXXine.
Oh, so yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think recent influences, I definitely see David Lynch. Like when she reads her line, I just picture Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive, where she just fucking kills that. She kills the audition in the movie,
Yeah.
but it actually, like, her acting breaks the fourth wall in a way, and you forget you're watching Mulholland Drive and you fall into her performance. You're like, holy shit. But also Prano Bailey Bond Censor, I think it's all over this fucking movie. All over this movie. I think it was a huge influence. I could be completely wrong. They might just both draw the same historical influences, but there was
Video nasties.
yeah, but there's something about the whole that like third act of Censor where we go into the movie that's being made and how she kind of slips into it. I feel like there's definitely just flavors that I totally picked up watching this both times. Stronger today, stronger the second time. Shall we spoiler?
Why
Captain.
not?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you're listening to this and you have not seen MaXXXine, turn it the fuck off. Go see it.
Okay, Sean, can I please kick things off with first spoiler? 'Cause it's
Please.
burning a hole
Go
in my
ahead.
mind. Yeah, it's just such a shame that Anthony isn't here, because We got a reference to Seijun Suzuki's Tokyo Drifter with one of the best kills in the film. Kevin Bacon getting crushed in the car compactor. He's just totally referencing Tokyo Drifter. It's so great.
I love Kevin Bacon in the film.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I
yes, yes.
fucking love Kevin Bacon. I was sitting there the entire time going like, man, if he were alive and he could have got him, he would. I feel like he would have gotten fuck. Oh, what's his name from
Emmett Walsh.
Yes.
Okay, that's really weird because I recorded another podcast today and Emmett Walsh was in that movie. Why is he everywhere all of a sudden?
Because he's Emmett fucking Walsh. I mean, when
Yeah.
you look, I couldn't help it. I was sitting there watching the movie, and the whole time I was thinking to myself, "Wow, did Kevin Bacon dial in Emmett Walsh with his performance? Like, because it's just the sleaziness of this detective, and like,
Yeah.
that's gonna cost you extra." Like, I was like, "Oh my god, he's that character. This is fucking great." And at some point, like, it almost feels like it's not even about who hired him anymore. It's about like him just like completing his like little sleazy thing that he wants to do anyway. Like he's taking pleasure in it. And I was just like, oh my God, you're fantastic.
Well, she makes it personal, right? And he's not one to
She
be. I mean,
does.
dude, that scene where she fucks him up with the keys. God damn, that's like I fucking love
That
that
was
scene so
great.
much. I love her character. So she is. I mean, I cannot take my eyes off her every moment she's on screen. It reminds me of Infinity Pool, where like I don't know what it is, but God, she is so powerful and like
Yes.
magnetic, and oh my God, she is just such a fucking good actress. Holy shit.
And putting out and I had to look up yeah, Theda Bara, silent movie star who originated the term the vamp. I just love how she just like stubs out a cigarette on her Hollywood Star Walk of Fame.
Thank you. I meant to look that up and I couldn't remember the name when I left the theater. I was
Yeah,
like, fuck.
First
Yeah,
version of
same.
first version of Cleopatra, 1917. She only was in silent films. You know, and after that, you know, that's like really all she's known for. And like the whole time I was like, because when I saw that, I was like, why is Ty West, you know, like bringing her into the mix, you know, like having a reference there. And then just sort of, then the more and more I thought about it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, perfect.
She's also referenced in Pearl.
Oh,
Oh.
good call. Good call. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Let me ask you guys this. So
Okay.
I feel like everybody kind of, or several of us mentioned that they have a point of contention with the movie.
Mm.
And I'm curious if it's all the same thing. And I'll just say my point of contention with the movie, the first time I saw it, I knew where it was going, but in my head at several points, I was like, please don't let the Black Glove Killer be her father.
Yep.
Because it seems so fucking obvious. But I mean, in my head, I'm running the numbers. I'm like, there is nobody else it could be. Like you can't pull somebody out of your ass at the end of the movie and be like, oh, this is my cousin from, oh, wow. Who knew? Because the only person that would be surprised is the character, and everybody watching the movie would be like, fuck you.
So that's a big point of contention because I'll tell you what, I kind of fucking love that about the movie.
It completes the cycle.
Yes, because the first movie is it keeps referencing her father, and like the old lady is watching, Pearl is watching these fucking sermons. It keeps playing in the background, and it has that opening of her as a little girl, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And then when the shit started to happen, I was like, I felt like it was too on the nose, so I thought I didn't trust it. But then at some point, I was like, it's the father.
It has
It's
to
the
be. There's
father.
no.
And then I got kind of excited because I was like, I'm so glad he's closing this out because I felt like that was a big like finger point to that, like especially because the 80s, like it felt like a big finger point to the religious right and like people who
Yep.
are overly Christian, like I know I say that when it sounds condemning, but I'm a person whose grandmother on my mother's side was like, she gave a whole lot of money to like TBN and all those like online, I have sinned against you, like all these fucking hypocrites that like eventually went to jail or died. And like the fact that like her father has taken on murder as a method of purging people of their sin is outlandish, but at the same time plausible for the people who thought in that way. So, and I love the fact that he's like using the Night Stalker and like Satanic Panic as his cover of like, it can't possibly be him. I fucking love that. I thought it was great. Maybe I'm the only person in the theater that loved it, but I kind of loved it. I was like, yeah. And he has to be stopped by his porn star daughter. That's amazing.
It's funny when you put it like that.
It is funny when you put it that way.
What, Ivy, what was it you referenced? There was something that you would have liked to have seen done differently, perhaps. What was that?
I had a few things that I would have liked to have seen MaXXXine acting more like. Like I was talking to Missy and I was saying that there were multiple MaXXXines. None of my problems are with Mia Goth at all. She is constantly changing who MaXXXine is depending on who she's talking to, what situation she's in. She's playing dozens of MaXXXines. She's not just playing one. But we got glimpses of badass MaXXXine when she's in the alley with Buster Keaton and when she has the keys and she's bashing him. Like, I wanted to see a little bit more of that. I think that we saw too much of real MaXXXine, which I was referring to as vulnerable MaXXXine.
Okay.
I think I could have had like littler peaks of that and more of any of the other characters she was pretending to be for all of these people.
That's a fair point.
I did like the dad thing. Was it established in X that the televangelist was MaXXXine's father?
Yeah.
So, well, wait a minute. Now, here's my question. So this leads perfectly into my next question, because I thought I heard it the first time, and I asked, and both Kirsten and my friend that was in town, Chris, said, yeah. And I paid special attention when that scene where she's got the shotgun, sawed-off shotgun, he's laying on the ground, the helicopter's above her, and he's doing his like, I failed you. I tried to be just like your daddy. Does that, because you gotta wonder, so is she actually related? She's gotta be, the character has to be related to Pearl. I mean, it's impossible that, not only does the same actress play both in X, but then you go back and she plays Pearl and she looks identical, right? And there's other like through lines where you're like, are they related? So I really wondered if that was just this brief little thing where it's like, I tried to treat you, I forget how he said it, but like your daddy, removing himself, like it's a different person. So I don't know. Am I nuts? Does anybody else get the idea that maybe that was not actually her biological father?
No, I didn't catch that, but going back to your original question, that I hated that. that was my big issue with the movie, was when we get this, that the payoff is this cult leader father, because he'd been, and part of it maybe because I was talking to Ivy and she said it might have been because of the trailer, and I only saw the trailer once or twice, but when I saw the trailer in the theater, like they specifically mentioned the Night Stalker in the trailer, and I thought that's what we were getting, was one of those serial killer kind of Night Stalker kind of movies, and that's what I wanted. If it had been like a Night Stalker type character or even him, I probably would have loved it. But then we got this cult leader thing that kind of caught me out of left field. I didn't see all the clues. It's been a while since I saw X, and I don't like Pearl. I've not made it all the way through it. So it felt kind of out of left field, and it didn't feel like what they were advertising. I don't think I realized that I subconsciously had that expectation. It took me a few days and a couple conversations to find it. But that is the thing I hate about the movie. It doesn't work for me at all.
I love that they misdirected us. So that the stuff in the trailer, because they mentioned the Night Stalker repeatedly. And when I realized, this is, I love now directors, because how many times have I complained about fucking trailers, right?
Mm.
Yes.
Directors, really good directors are getting smart. And it's just like the Long Legs trailer I avoided, and when I finally saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's the perfect trailer, because literally it tells me nothing, but it drove my need to see it to a fever pitch.
Yeah.
Fede Alvarez, Alien Romulus. Perfect trailer. It literally tells you nothing about the fucking movie, but it gives you all the fucking dopamine hits you want. This, they knew they had to give you something to hook you, right? And so they use all that background radio TV shit about the Night Stalker, and you think that, and the reason why I'm glad they didn't do it is because I feel like I'm fascinated by the Night Stalker, and I'm not really a serial killer kind of person, but it's been done multiple times in recent years. I mean, I just feel like I mean, I was kind of like a little let down with the trailer when I heard that, because I'm like, really? It's going to be her face off against a Night Stalker? I feel like American Horror Story 1984 like was the definitive, nobody needs to do this again. We did it. A couple other things did it. Well, American Horror Story, I feel like, has done it multiple times, but that one where it's like, no, let's just make him a fucking character. It's cool. I was glad they didn't do it. Let me ask you this. If you had just watched a 5-hour movie that was X and MaXXXine as one movie, okay? And the dividing line is like, however many years. Like, so X ends and then it says like, I forget what it is, 10 years later, whatever. Would you think, I feel like maybe the whole dad cult thing would have worked better, but I feel like because of the episodic nature and the time between, it felt weird. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Maybe, but I don't know. This had points that, like, again, Ray was talking about how much he loves the Kevin Bacon character. He bugged the fuck out of me. Because
Too over the top.
Wow.
Too over the top.
Oh, that's what I loved about it. That's what I loved about it.
And I'm glad. I mean, I think it's awesome that you love it so much that we can see the same movie and have such different reactions.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, and maybe it's because I do like those murder mystery, detective serial killer movies, and I've watched a lot of them, and I guess it felt like that's what I was getting, and then when I didn't get it, I got salty about it.
Oh,
I could see. I could see
yeah,
that.
no, that's not what he's making. I think Ivy hits it on the head. I think he's making a sleazy angel type movie. I think the to go back to what you're asking, the way I interpreted that line of I was trying to be your daddy was, I think that's him possibly acknowledging a failure in his own parenting.
Yeah, that's what maybe
he was. Maybe he was overly religious in his zealotry and so conditioned on what are you gonna do? Who are you gonna be? And he failed her as a parent. And that's why she left and became a porn star and everything else. And so he's now trying to make up for it in a fucking incredibly heinous way.
But it worked. She actually says, you didn't fail me. You gave me what I needed. He actually delivered.
But that's not what he
Parent
wants
of the
to give
year.
her. It's not what he wants to give her. It's what she wants, but it's not what he wants to give her.
Yeah, right.
If anything, this series is about obsession with fame, obsession with achieving, and it not only like makes sense that we're seeing her obsession with fame and achieving, but it's also her father's obsession with achieving and Pearl's obsession with achieving. And to go back to the concept of like it as a mystery, I don't. That's again, that's not the film he's making. He's making like a.
Yeah.
I mean, shit. That moment with Buster Keaton, that I fucking love that because I thought he was gonna pull back, and then when she had him on the ground, I was like, is she gonna put the gun in his ass? Because she made him suck the gun. So I was like, where is this going?
I know, and
then
it
he
went to the
didn't let me
worst possible
down.
place.
Yes, and then he didn't let me down with a ball stop and a greasy
Oh.
fucking destructive ball stop. And I was like,
Oh,
fuck yes.
God.
Fuck yes for not pulling back, you son of a bitch. Thank you. Thank you for making that grimy and gritty and fucking rough to watch.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Like, I think that's the thing that he succeeds with in this movie for me is that like the moments where I think like where someone else might have pulled back and been like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna stop right here. I'm gonna have the knife plunge go into the back of the friend and then call it a day. No. He's gonna get stabbed to fucking death. He's gonna get cut in the back of the back of the neck. Like it's a rough kill, but man,
Yeah.
he doesn't pull back, and I'm like, thank you, sir. Thank you for that.
And Ray, they never really say whether or not, Nut Crunch guy is the actual original Night Stalker, and like everything else after that is just sort of a copycat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
that's interesting.
they just kind of leave it up there. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily that that's the case, but they, for all we know, he could actually be, Ramirez, if you were, like the original Night Stalker. And then everything else that comes after that is just sort of like, wannabe, and like Pearl's dad, maybe yes, maybe not character is just sort of like capitalizing on that fear, just in the same way he's capitalizing off of Satanic Panic.
Yes, absolutely. I love the setting of the film too. Like oh man. I have trouble thinking of another horror movie that is so fucking Los Angeles.
Yeah, but here's well, I mean, here's the thing, like the most Los Angeles horror movie is not actually in Los Angeles. It's like Halloween, which was shot in Pasadena, which is like very much Pasadena. But yeah, no, but this is the weird thing. This out of the trilogy, this is a film that was actually shot like where it's meant to be. The other two films were in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because they did it
shit.
during COVID.
Yeah,
That's
during
how
COVID.
that's how this
Oh,
happened.
That's how Pearl
wow.
came about. It's like they were shutting down for COVID. They're like, hey, we're quarantined. We might as well just chill and make a sequel to this film that we're making, and that's what they
I
did.
had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah, those are both shot, and that's how. Yeah, exactly like John said. They were quarantined, so they wrote because they got there and they had to quarantine for 2 weeks before they could film. So they wrote Pearl, and then he basically took what he needed after the crew from X and the cast left. They stayed behind and hired on other actors from New Zealand or whatever and crew and made Pearl. And then, the father, I forget the actor's name. He's from New Zealand. I believe that I don't know the character's name, but the guy with the baseball bat and the dog, I believe he's from New Zealand. They did like kind of, bring with them because there's also like a shot in New Zealand like credit at the end. But I don't think anything in the movie was shot in New Zealand. They used scenes that were because they reference X, constantly.
Yeah. But I mean, I mean, I'm born and raised Los Angelino, and I just love my city. So like, just the fact that like, the only other thing in recent culture that I can remember that I'm so like, this is so fucking LA, is Under the Silver Lake, because it's just
Yes. Well, that's not LA. That's Silver Lake. That movie is fucking
true.
Silver Lake.
Well, that's still
it's
LA.
It's a different thing.
Still
It's
Los
a different
Angeles
thing.
Metro. I'm sorry, but I mean, you have where the bodies are found. You have Hollywood. You have you have Hollywood Boulevard. You have like the studio that she goes to shoot at, which I'm pretty sure is Universal.
It
And then
is.
you've got like that, literally that house where you have to take the gondola up. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of that house. Like it's so like in Los Angeles. And I was like, I love this. This is amazing.
Yeah. What did you guys think about? Well, actually, no, John. Let's talk about Elizabeth Bender.
Yeah. Talking about, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, she's a gender swap James Cameron, Puritan to Piranha 2, and just the aspirations, like this is
Yes.
this is a grindhouse film, but I'm coming at it from like the sensibility of an art house person, and this is and the fact that it also quote along with her, it's like the film quotes Betty Davis and says, unless you're known in my profession as a monster, you're not a star. That
Yep.
applies to both MaXXXine and Elizabeth Bender. And just with the whole the whole film referencing all of this with, we get the Psycho house on the Universal backlot, but it's not really the site out. I don't, to my knowledge, I don't think they even mention Alfred Hitchcock. I think they just say this is Psycho house, but it was also in Psycho 2.
Now,
Yes, yeah.
there is a Hitchcock reference where, at the end, when after everything, Maxine is made up in that like 50s house, right? Elizabeth Bender says like a Hitchcock blonde, like a true Hitchcock blonde.
Got it.
But other than that, when she shows the Psycho house, she says, this is the house from Psycho. They actually shot the sequel here a couple years ago, if you can believe that, because
Got it. Yeah.
you look back on it, it is completely bizarre when you think about the fact that Psycho came out what year, and then almost 20 years later, somebody's like, what would make a good slasher movie since that's hot right now? Let's like just pull up Hitchcock's masterpiece and shit all over it.
Yeah. Let's bring Tony Perkins back and do whatever we will with him. And it's weird because Hitchcock Blonde, I mean, yeah, it's a Hitchcock reference, but it's just as much of a Brian De Palma reference as anything else.
Yeah, good point. Good point. What else, Ivy? You got what other spoiler elements would you like to speak on?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. Somebody spark something and I'll throw something out. I wish I had been able to see it a second time before this.
Let me here's a question for you, Abby, because you brought up Angel.
Yeah.
And Angel has that like sleazy element because it's a young girl that goes off and kind of is empowering herself by becoming a prostitute. One of the things that I think is interesting about this film, and I think that he's referencing and is that we live in this time now where like people can just go and create an OnlyFans or make a few films and kind of become like very internet famous and also kind of make money pretty quickly in porn nowadays. And meanwhile, we have Maxine, who like when she shows up for her audition, they say, "Oh, so you're a pretty big name in porn." But that being said, she's a pretty big name in porn, but she literally shows up to her at one of her shoots that we see, and she's walking through a strip club to this back room where there's a couple people fucking and making a scene, and then she's going to prep herself, and then when she's done with that, she has to get ready to go to her next job, which is in this like sleazy theater that's like literally like tokens for men to watch you behind glass, and so she can make more money doing that, and she's living in this apartment kind of eking an existence by so I think he's like kind of referencing the like sleaziness of like how there wasn't really porn stars per se in the way that there is now, where like it just stuck with me that they said like, oh, you made quite a name for yourself in adult cinema, and like, if she were that big of a name in adult cinema in today's times, she would have good money already. But she's living in a little apartment over at a video store in Hollywood. So I think it adds itself to that whole to the concept of Angel, and like this girl who's trying to make money for himself to go to school, which is, oh man, it's such a weird sleazy element of that film, really, to me. It's always so strange.
And it begins in the same, that whole sequence begins in the same way that X begins, where you have like the framing of the scene with like the
Yes.
door slowly opening. It's the same with the barn at the beginning of
Yeah.
X, you know, that where it just frames us in that 4:3 ratio, and then we go right through.
Yep.
But only this time around, MaXXXine just walks in, and like the door is like having trouble like expanding the frame.
Like so I first saw the first Ty West movie I saw was in 2005, and my friend Dennis showed me The Roost, and I've been a fan ever since. And this movie, one of the things I love about this movie, so even when after that first viewing where I had a little bit of cognitive dissonance, I love Ty West style. House of the Devil always gonna be my favorite by him, always. It's just like nothing's ever, you know. It doesn't mean the other movies are bad. It's just, but he has a very specific vision. He moves a camera a certain way. Like you can see it when she's running down steps, and what's his Bacon's chasing her, and the camera, I don't know what it's called because I don't have like the vernacular for a camera operator, but there's a certain way that they like frame it and move the camera with her, and you don't normally see people. You see, it's an old technique that's not really utilized now, and he does it in a lot of his movies. So this movie was a joy because it is literally taking Ty West and his kind of sensibilities and his style and putting it on a big screen with a much bigger budget than I've ever seen before. And I just think that it works, and it's kind of like, it just kind of proof of concept for everything he's been doing all along, that like, yes, like if you give this guy money, he can produce. And you know, his story is great. He was on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast years ago, when the Bret Easton Ellis podcast was on it wasn't behind a paywall on Patreon, it was on Podcast One or some podcast network. Ty West was on, and the way that he started was he went to film school in like New York or wherever it was, and his teacher knew Larry Fessenden. And you guys know Larry Fessenden to me is like a fucking saint. Like every time I see the guy, hear his name, anything, I just smile, and I don't stop smiling for hours. I just think the man is fucking amazing. And so his teacher's like, all right, I want you to meet this guy that I know, Larry, Larry Fessenden. And so he met him, and like he's like, oh, asking him about his what he was working on or whatever as a student, and Ty West like just like vomited out this idea of, oh yeah, I got the script about these like bats that bite people, turn them into zombies. Like, I think I could get you money for that. If you want to, can you get me a script? Yeah. And he had no script, like ran home and fucking wrote the fucking thing in like 2 days and gave him a script. And Fessenden, like he always does, he seeds these creators. He's done this for so many people. And I loved seeing Fessenden in this. I've been looking at the Glass Eye Picks, Fessenden's company. Their Instagram for like weeks has just been all Ty West. It's just constantly been like celebrating that he's here, that he's having this moment. And I don't know, so let me posit it to you guys like this. Like, do you think this could be the start? Like, will Ty West go on to continue to make movies that are going to be culturally relevant? He's having a moment. Whether or not this is actually culturally relevant, it is because everybody's talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that this, like, you think he's in the big leagues now, he'll stay there?
That's a good question.
Like, this feels like the pinnacle of something right before he does something massive.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way.
Something massive. like a real big budget, and it's Ty West, so I'm not going to say this is the route he's going to take, but this would be where people who have used horror as a springboard to make quote unquote real movies, this is when it would happen. But I don't think that's who Ty West is.
I don't think so either, Ivy. I think you're exactly right.
neither.
And when you said springboard to something bigger, you know what? I like literally caught my breath because I was like, oh God, Marvel, please don't take Ty West from me. Please don't take Ty West. Please
Right?
don't take Ty West. Like Marvel's become this bully. Like it's like my father that comes in when I've been bad and takes my toys away, right? Like, don't take another one. Please, please.
I think if that happens, then the way it will happen is like a TV series, because he's done a lot of TV work.
He has,
So
yeah.
if
He
anything-
disappeared for years, right? For years. I thought he was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
No, he did like, I was just looking at his like on his IMDb, but he did like I mean, The Exorcist or
Them, that
yeah, like he's
soul-shattering
done a,
crime show.
this soundtrack and just he's done a whole bunch of stuff that like where he's just like done like episodes here or there. So I think if anything, there might be a possibility of like him being asked to make like an episode of something, but I have to back up Ivy on that. I don't think that he's that kind of guy that would ever
No,
be
he's not.
like, oh, I'm gonna take this big ass project and like make it. I don't. It's like Eggers. Like I think he's always going to be one of those people that is like challenging the status quo and making what he wants to make and making something that he finds enjoyable. Like Eggers is making Nosferatu, and that's coming out, and like, what a fucking like of all the movies to go remake. I mean, damn, that's. And you're gonna, I mean, I just can't imagine that's gonna be super commercial anyway. Like it'll be Edgar's interpretation of Nosferatu. So like I think anything that West is gonna end up doing is gonna be his interpretation of something.
Yeah.
So that even if they're like, hey, can you make the script and it's not yours, it's just an idea, it's still gonna be him interpreting it in his own way. I don't think he's ever going to not be Ty West, you know? So
But I definitely don't think he's going to have trouble finding funding for whatever.
no.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
No.
And that makes me
After
very
this,
happy.
No.
Yes. Very
That
much.
makes me happy too. That makes me super happy.
Did anybody see how it did at the box office? I have no idea. I never look at that.
I don't give a shit.
I mean, well, I don't generally give a shit, but it is always. I'm usually sad when I hear something I really like bombed, right? Where I'm like, really? Like, you know, I think
Actually, I'll amend that. I've been caring a little bit more recently because I'm really wanting like the true cinematic experience to survive the post-COVID era, but not only, maybe more importantly than that, the post WGA SAG-AFTRA strikes,
Yes.
and to really demonstrate what people were striking about in the first place. And it's always kind of depressing when that wish doesn't come to fruition, because you know, I always bet first on the movie going audience and cinephiles, you know, as being like smarter than the studio bigwigs, and most of the times I'm right, but it's, you know, kind of sad, you know, when box office receipts show that you know, maybe that's not the case. So, but be that as it may, I don't know what's going on here.
I'm looking right now because
It
I'm
did
curious now.
6.7.
Yeah, what's that?
It did
I-
6.7.
6.7.
And then
That-
another 1.1 million overseas for 7.8. But it is the biggest opening of the series.
okay.
The
Okay.
others did not do that at all. But
Oh.
it's also, how many theaters is it in? Compared
I
to
think it's in most theaters. Like
It's
I
in.
could be
oh,
wrong.
I can answer this question. I looked this up. A Box Office Mojo, according to Box Office Mojo, it is in 2,450 theaters.
which is less than
Uh,
Pearl, which was 3,000. What?
Hmm.
Yeah,
What?
That's fucking
That-
and
weird.
That doesn't sound
number
right.
3. It was number 3 this weekend.
What was God help me
Oh
for
no,
asking this? What was 1 and 2?
Despicable Me was number 1, I think.
Ugh.
Oh God.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It
And
was number
Inside
4.
Out.
It was number 4.
Where's the meteor? We don't
Sorry,
deserve
but-
to live.
Correction. It was number 4. Despicable Me 4 was number 1. Number 2 is Inside Out 2.
Inside Out. That's what I
A
figured.
Quiet Place Day 1 was number 3.
Did you guys notice every time she got in her car and fucking drove away, she just like fucking pulled out in front of there, and it was always there was a car coming up where you could see this. She was gonna cut this car off every fucking time.
Oh yeah, she's a bat out
And
of hell. She's a straight bat out of hell. It's amazing.
It's intentional because I feel like that's the pulse of that. That's almost that like 80s thing where it's like, fuck it, like flip up the collar, light the cigarette, and just, let the fucking chips fall where they may. And she's so fucking, she walks out of that screening. I love that. Like just her like whole strut, right? And she's just like, y'all can go home. I just fucking nailed that. Oh, I fucking, man, dude, that scene.
I think it's the charm of the character, though.
Man,
she's so intense. She so believes in herself that, like, you kind of at some point you're just like, yeah, she's gonna make it because she just can't. She cannot. She's gonna make it.
She wills herself to it. But also,
Yes.
like, I love the fact that they didn't like cocaine is with her from the beginning of X to the end of this movie, and there's no time where it's demonized, and it's just like this is just part of her routine. I like that they did that and that it stayed with her right up to the fucking end. I mean, even to like, there's a scene where she fucking blows back a rail, and when she tilts up, you can see it in her nose. Like the camera very specifically kind of stays on it. And so I feel like it's like the cocaine, obviously the fucking ball crushing, gun toting fucking badass, but then also there is that vulnerability. And like Ivy, I had not thought about it, but I feel like maybe it is a little bit uneven because she's very vulnerable with the director, which obviously like we get why, right? Because that's the gatekeeper for her success. I love the scene with her and is it Leon is the friend? I forget the friend's name, but I love just the scene where they're like sleeping on the couch, like they fell asleep watching a movie, and like just like I don't know,
Puritan.
the movie's Puritan, but Leon, okay, I really liked him. I wish we had more of him. Like that was one regret.
I
could
like
use
that
more.
Me too.
And like
I love
you
that
notice,
character.
He got a great death though.
Oh,
He
he
did.
did, dude. That fucking neck. Oh man, that was some fucking. Oh God, wow, great death. You notice he's putting the videotapes away, and there's like a rack. It says like homemade, right? And I'm like, so is this porn or is this just homemade like regional movies? But there's even like little stickers on each, like that he obviously put on there. Like one of them says like worth watching. Like it's like he's helping his customers out. Like, yeah, I'll stock this, but I might not point people towards it. And then just that scene where she walks away and he's holding the video and he's like, ass sandwich. So, it was so fucking bizarre. Like as I don't know, just as the end of the scene it was weird.
Am I the only person that before that kill scene happens with him, and we get that moment where the unseen person walks up to the counter?
Yes, I don't do that
and
anymore.
He says, I don't do that anymore. I was like, oh, what the fuck did he not do anymore? Because he's almost vaguely insulted by the fact that somebody is asking him about something that he doesn't do anymore. So I was like, and he owns a porn shop. So I was like, is it
Well, it's
really
it's not a porn
lascivious?
shop. Is it a porn
was
shop
just
or
a
is it
video
just a video
store.
store?
No. There were racks with other genres in there.
Yeah,
It was-
okay.
It wasn't Blockbuster. It was a sleaze
Right.
video rental that had porn out mixed with everything.
Well, the
else.
porn is
Yeah,
out
it
in
wasn't
the
like
middle of the
behind a
store.
curtain in a back
But
room.
I
It was
thought
right
he
Right,
there.
the
That's
big
what I
red
meant.
curtain.
I thought the implication was he used to be a sex worker.
That's what I was, and I mean,
Okay.
I can only assume that he was like the gay best friend because
Yeah.
that line at the beginning where it's like, no, you like me
right,
because
babe.
I'm the only guy trying not to, not trying to fuck you. So could only assume.
Okay.
But I really liked his. I like just the Judas Priest T-shirt, the skateboard when he skates away, just
Yeah.
the broken arm, like
He was
you know.
He had a great
Yeah, he was
look,
great.
just all of it perfect.
He actually, I felt like he had Ty West mannerisms a little bit. And I don't know if that was just me imagining things or whatever, but there was something about him when I watched it this time. I was like, I almost feel like he's got some of his mannerisms.
Any thoughts on the disembodied head?
Oh,
At the end. I have thoughts.
please.
But
I have none. So please, you guys, John, please.
I haven't had a chance to really formulate them as much as others on the film, except to say that it's coming on the heels very appropriately of the threat of AI taking over cinema and using the past as a staging ground of which to hash out contemporary arguments. And that's all I got so far.
I
Interesting.
thought it was just a cute little
Okay.
girl.
You say that again,
Sorry,
Ivy? You
At the end, whenever the credits are rolling over her frozen face, I thought that was like a little nod to Pearl.
Well, that
Oh,
too,
it's what it
for
is.
sure.
It's
I thought it was
oh,
just
That
a little
too,
Pearl
for
reference.
sure. Yeah.
That's
And
what
kind of
it
the
is.
end of the story. Like I didn't think there was I mean, obviously, when she's having the cast done in the very beginning and she has like the sort of a freak out because she's having visions and kind of things, I was thinking that was just kind of a little finish off of that little storyline, but also a little cute wink to Pearl. I had no thoughts there was anything deeper to it.
Oh, I think there's something deeper, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't even know how I didn't think of that because the best shot in Pearl to me is that shot. That like
Yeah.
and that he made her hold that face for that fucking long is just incredible.
But it
That's
also
so
ties into the VHS and Lily Collins and blah blah blah. That also ties into to the face she's making and
yes. Oh man. That'd be cool if they actually went and made the Puritan and the Puritan 2.
that'd be
Yeah, I like Piranha better.
No, I think it would be great if Ty West just did like the Puritan 2. Like just
Yeah,
called
there you go.
just
That would
made
be
like
cool.
yeah, and like just to kind of mess with people where people are like, where's Puritan
Part
1?
one.
You know,
Right.
just
Uh,
yeah.
Did everybody else stay until the very fucking end just to see if there was like going to be another like?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't.
I did
course.
also for two reasons. One, because one of my good friends was part of the swing gang in the film, so I wanted to see his name in the credits. And you can kind of tell that in the theater there were the way that people were applauding throughout the end of the credits. You can kind of tell that there were people from the crew that were in there. Also, the assistant director on Puritan 2 was in the audience. He was
Oh, cool.
he was a few people in
That's
front of
cool.
me wearing a Hawaiian shirt in line. But yeah, no, I stayed towards the end, of course.
Was there something? I didn't.
No, there wasn't. There
No,
wasn't. But
there was nothing.
No, a little bit of
when I
letdown, but no.
saw X, I stayed just for whatever reason and was shocked at the Pearl thing, right? So then when I saw Pearl, I was like, there's no way it's going to happen again. And then it did, right? So I was like, there's no way I'm not staying to the end of this fucking movie. He's already said he's put it to bed. He's got an idea for a fourth, but he's just leaving it where it is for now. I would assume to do other things. And I think, Ivy, you hit it on the head. I think there's something. I don't know. Like, I don't think it'll be him interpreting something else, but of course it could be. But I feel like somebody's going to give him money to do something, and I'm wondering if because he did In a Valley of Violence in 2013, I think, and he did not do another movie until X. And so as a fan, like I had like resigned that he must have just, I mean, it happens, right? People just, I'm good.
Stop.
And I'm wondering if it could be TV because he obviously did a lot of TV during that time. Like, and that was something like it was a couple years before I realized that, and maybe he was learning the trade, like, okay, let me see what this TV thing is like. Who knows? I just want I just want him to always make movies. I love his movies so much. It's like I'm hoping this brings like Trigger Man. Like Trigger Man's impossible. It's impossible to find. I'd love to see that come back into print. I'd love to see the Roost get a Blu-ray.
Yeah, the Roost is great.
Oh,
Because
so
you
good.
sent me it after you saw it, you sent it to me, and that was my introduction to Ty West too.
And Innkeepers is one that like the first time I
Yeah,
saw it,
that's
I
a
just
fun one.
did not get it. And then the second time I saw it, I mean, granted, I was stoned out of my fucking mind, but like I understood like, oh, it like literally is goofy until it's just I think it's actually like terrifying. The last
Mhm.
15 minutes of it is just so fucking intense. I couldn't believe it. I don't know. Man, I love them. I love him. And In a Valley of Violence, such a solid Western, just such a fucking solid Western. Even
I
with
didn't
John
know about that
Travolta.
one.
It's
Oh
great.
God.
Even with John Travolta. You know how much I'm like, if John Travolta's in your movie,
You hate him as much as
9
I
times
do.
out of 10, not gonna fucking see it because I think he's one of the worst actors that's ever walked the face of the planet, and he doesn't even bother me in it. I mean,
Okay.
he could have been somebody else. I would have preferred that. Could have been Emmett Walsh, and it would have been better. But
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. I didn't even know it
it's good.
existed.
It's really
And I
good.
like Westerns, so I'll check it out.
You'll dig it. You know who's in it is I always forget his name. Deputy so and so from Sinister's in it, and
Really?
he yeah, and Fessenden's in it. It's good. It's a really good play. Ethan
Okay.
Hawke is the main character. It's basically John Wick before John Wick.
Okay. Okay.
But
I
it's
can
good.
get behind that. And Deputy so and so is awesome.
Oh, he's so good. So fucking good. Closing thoughts. Ivy.
Actually, I had a question. What was
Yeah,
your
please,
problem with
anything.
the third act? You said you had something going on with the third act. What was your issue with the third act?
Mine?
Yeah, I thought you said you had some sort of issue with the third act in particular.
Oh yeah, it was the father reveal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
It was a
payoff.
father reveal. Like I just
Likewise.
it makes
Me
perfect
too.
sense. And I did think about it today, like, well, okay, because in Fangoria, he said originally when he pitched Pearl to A24, he pitched Pearl and MaXXXine, and they were like, well, I mean, why don't we just do MaXXXine? It seems, and then we'll see if we can do Pearl. And he's like, no, because if we do MaXXXine, we're not doing Pearl. So I'd prefer to do Pearl. And he stuck by his guns and they made it, right? So that got me thinking, what would it have been like to watch X and MaXXXine without Pearl? And in thinking about that earlier today, after seeing it driving home, I was like, I think that because I don't know why the father thing bothered me. Because on one hand, like I know why it bothered me because seemed so predictable. But at the same time, if that was all one movie, it wouldn't be it would be what like it couldn't be anything else. So I feel like it's just been my issues with it were just the thing is it's like it's hard to learn, but sometimes you just gotta like whatever my expectations are, I try to separate them from the movie. Like there's sometimes I just see something and I'm just like I fucking hate it. I don't care. Like, but he made the fucking movie that he wanted to make. And he was aware if there's perceived shortcomings or things that seem goofy or don't add up or are predictable or whatever, it's all because he's like, no, but that's part of what I'm making. And Malignant is the perfect example because Malignant is fucking terrible unless you think about the fact that, like, oh, I get what James Wan is doing. Once you understand it, I feel like it's like, wow, holy shit, this dude just made Aquaman. Not that I would ever see that or whatever. But I mean, massive fucking movie for a massive company, a massive IP, and then he turns around and makes Malignant. I could kiss that man for doing that. It's just the most bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre.
It's so funny because, like I was saying earlier, like I just felt like I literally went with Jesus afterward to eat dinner, and like as we're sitting there, he's like, "So what'd you think of the movie?" I was like, "I loved that the father reference in the first movie paid off." Like I was just so happy that he stuck with that. He did it, and he carried it through. Because I felt like that whole first, it felt like with X, like there was going to be more involving the father, and then when it ended, I was like, oh, so it's just he's trying to show us the origins of this character, and like perhaps even like a criticism of Christianity in that way of like, oh, see, look at what the daughter of a good, of this big time uh religious figure becomes. She becomes a porn star. She becomes a stripper, then a porn star. And I was like, oh, okay, I can be fine with that as the reference point, as like just as like what he's doing. But then when the father showed up and like we really see his zealotry, we really see this cult of like bent Christianity that he's created. I was like, I like it. You carried it all the way to that point, and it made me happy because I thought, why have all that in that first movie to not pay off eventually? And the fact that it paid off, I was so happy about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not wrong. It makes sense, and like I said, if it was one movie, it couldn't like it would. I feel like it would have been more satisfying. I think the other stuff, the other story elements between the beginning and the end, lead you to think, that, and like Missy said too, that advertising suggests something, and like you just get the sense it's a
Yeah.
bigger world. Here's what it is. I feel like, Missy, I think you and I both for sure got this. You get a sense that it's a bigger world, and when they collapse it back down to the beginning, it's slightly disappointing at first.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I can see that.
Oh.
That kind of that whole payoff just kind of killed the movie for me. But I mean, I'm glad that Ty West makes the movies he wants, and good for him.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't have to. I mean, there's different movies for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we always say
I'm
this.
glad. Right. I'm glad he made
you-
it. I'm glad he made the movie he wanted to. I'm glad it exists, and when we do get violence, the gore was fucking great.
Mhm.
So good.
Shotgun to the head was extremely
Oh
satisfying.
yeah.
Wasn't
good.
it?
Extremely
Oh, man.
satisfying.
That was such an 80s head explosion.
Yeah, and it
Yes.
was so fucking good.
It was.
That was like, I have a real problem at this point in 2024 that people are still obsessively making nostalgia throwbacks to the 80s. So as soon as I hear, oh, it's set in the 80s, I don't want anything to do with it, because we have many decades that have happened since then that we could use to throw back to. Ty West does not make movies about the 80s. Ty West makes movies from the 80s.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
fuck
From
yeah.
the
Sure.
70s. Innkeepers, like those movies are from a different time than what they were actually.
Yes.
He just, the commitment he has, and like that head exploding when he gets shot is the perfect example. That is a 80s head explosion.
It is, man. It is.
And it was fucking excellent. That was satisfying. That made me happy.
Wanted to point out too, Tyler Bates once again did the score. Chelsea Wolfe was less involved than she was on X. There were a few moments where he was, I can't prove this, but I feel like Pino Donaggio has been in my ear so much recently. There were a couple moments where I'm like, he's totally fucking riffing on Pino Donaggio right now. And, because obviously, but there was even,
yes,
so
I heard them.
The sequence with, because they're in this, like now it's like you're never gonna not hear, right? The sequence with Chloe Farnsworth plays Amber James, and Halsey, I think, who I don't know who that is, plays Tabby Martin. where
Oh,
they're
it's a singer.
tied.
Yeah.
Okay, they're tied up, and it's like we're back to like they're filming it, right? So we're getting
Hmm.
that perspective. The music cues, it's just like slightly affected percussion, like kind of dramatic, and it's 100% those movies we were talking about before, those like Bastard Sons of De Palma movies. Oh man, I literally like the night that we saw this in the theater, we came home and watched put on 10 to Midnight with Charles Bronson because I'm like, I can't think anything sleazier than this fucking movie.
I've never seen that movie.
It's so sleazy. I mean, the killer is like he's like disrobes. He's always naked. It's just so fucking weird.
Sounds
Oh,
weird.
It's
I
so
have not
weird.
seen this film, but I've heard of it. It was on the How Did This Get Made podcast.
Yeah, it's
where they just where all they do is watch movies and then talk about how weird they are and how terrible they are. Like Howard the Duck is a perfect example.
it's actually not weird. Like I saw a lot of Charles Bronson and Chuck Norris shit in the 80s, and like it fits in, except for the nakedness is just weird. That makes it weird, but otherwise it's a standard.
That's what that was the big thing that they just kept criticizing about. They're like, why does this guy get naked so much? Like they were just like, what the fuck is happening in this movie?
It's free
weird.
on Amazon Prime. I have to watch this shit.
Watch it, watch it. I mean, I think it's a canon movie, and I also think it's what's that the Globus that production company. You'll know it the minute you see it. It's like Globus. I don't know, whatever. You'll know.
Oh, Galen Globus, something like that.
Something, yeah. That's it. Or some derivation of that.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that was it was very much like Canon and those kind of companies. Like when you saw that, you were like, oh, I know what I'm in for.
Yeah, you know what you're in for, exactly.
Mm.
So okay, so that's Ty West's MaXXXine. And listeners, I want you to seriously, Movie Made Los Angeles by John Trafton, Tastes Like Candy 2, Mallrats by Ivy Tholen. Just buy them and read them.
Buy them, read them. I mean, here's one glaring endorsement that I have for this whole series, because I've read Mallrats, I've read Tastes Like Candy. I'm almost finished with Tastes Like Candy 2. I've had the Kindle app on my phone in some derivation for about 15 years. Oh, maybe longer. And I have never sat through and read an entire thing on the Kindle app. I've always like started and been like, ugh. And like at some point I was like, I'm just going to have to get the book, or I just can't stand this. And I just stopped reading whatever I was reading and never returned to it. I started reading Tastes Like Candy, and before I knew it, it was done. And I was like, I can't believe I just read a whole thing on my phone. And like Ivy, I sent her that something because someone reacted. She reacted to a picture of someone posted on Instagram of like, dear God, your eyes. And I went, and I messaged her and I DM'd and I said, I've read all your books on my phone. And she's like, what are you doing to your eyes? And I was like, I can change the font, Ivy. And I was like, I can change the font, Ivy. And she was like, but it's a phone. And I went, yeah, but it's convenient.
Also, Ivy. So Ray, I don't remember what year this was when we went and saw Joe Bob do Redneck Saves Hollywood, and you had a brand new iPhone, and Keller and I were giving you shit for it. Ivy, Ray has iPhones that look like ghetto blasters to me. I'm like, what the fuck do you need a phone that fucking big for? Like, seriously?
I have one of those. I have
like you getting on the subway, walking around, you got a bandana tied around your thigh.
Yeah.
This is a Horror Vision, and go see MaXXXine, read those books, and sleep tight, motherfucker.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay in Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.
I love to make you groan. It is the highlight of my day.
I'm
But,
editing that out, by the way. I'm cruising